Welcome to the book of Ecclesiastes. I particularly, um, how do I say? I don't know how I felt about this book prior to now. We all know the famous verses, but then it was very interesting for me to understand that this book was actually an adventure, right? So the book takes us on an adventure, a quest for what gives life meaning. It was written by someone who was referred to as the teacher or the preacher, depending on which version you read. And many people believe that this is King Solomon in the twilight of his life. So this was him writing all the things that he had learned, all his life, and sharing the knowledge in his old age. It's a collection of all the findings from his quest to get the meaning of life. In verse 2, we get a summary of his findings. And the summary is simply this: it is all vanity. Vapor or breath is the word that is used to the Hebrew word for vanity that is used. And it basically just says it's all without substance or it's all transitory. He uses the word vanity 38 times in this book. Here's a summary of some of the things that he discovered. 1. Life is meaningless because it is a treadmill going nowhere. I wouldn't say meaningless if you ask me. Like, life isn't meaningless. Life can be meaningful. But is it a treadmill? Definitely, because sometimes some days feel the same and all. But he viewed life as constantly in motion, but never really achieving a meaningful goal. He also believed that there was a futility in work. It says all hard work is eventually cancelled out by death in 2:4-11 and 17-26. And to be honest, sometimes it does feel like that. If you work a 9 to 5 like I do, some days it's just like, oh God, what's all this for? But the fact is, if you don't find joy in what you're doing, you will definitely feel like this. And to be honest, death is a certain eventuality for all. But then, to be honest, it seemed a bit more morbid, but let's go on. Searching for human wisdom alone is futile. He tested the competence of human wisdom to try and comprehend creation, and then concluded that human wisdom only makes for sorry, what is the gosh, I need to learn how to read my own handwriting. And he concluded that human wisdom only gives sorrow and heartache rather than the achievement of real success. Well, essentially, what he was trying to say in this thing that I cannot read is ignorance is bliss. In spite of all his wisdom, he concluded that the wise and the foolish both come to the same end. And upon death, anything left behind as an inheritance may be handed over to someone who is lazy, or someone who is a squanderer, or someone that doesn't even care about your labors. And this is true. Think about it. I know about, some people that I know that in their lifetime they worked hard, amassed a lot of wealth and stuff, and then next thing you hear that, oh, maybe the children that inherited started selling them off or just waste. And it's like, oh my gosh, what a waste. But that's it. That was the end of the father's life. He passed it on to his children, and based upon the kind of children he has, they either squander it or build up upon it. So this actually rang very true to me. He drew the conclusion that one should enjoy food, drink, and work, and find joy in any way. Working for the Lord and trusting him instead of doing things for self-aggrandizement and fame. So yes, even though he says, oh, eat, drink, blah, 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 but the fact of the matter is you always have to just trust God and just work for him. Like do God's work here on earth. That's what I took from it. He names 14 pairs of seasons that man goes through in life. And those are the popular verses, that a time to be born, a time to die, to cry, to whatever. He says that every activity has its proper time and is ordained by God. We can either accept God's time and plan for our lives or be hurt by it. It's best to just trust God's will. and rest in his plan for our lives. Chapter 3:11 says, he made everything beautiful in its time. God is actively working in everything for a specific purpose. So even though it might start off rough or start off less than desirably, God's plan ultimately is one that brings us to, remember that saying in Jeremiah, to an expected end. So now this was the one I liked. Enjoyment is a gift from God. Verse 12. God has imposed limitation on life, and so in recognition of the fact that we as humans are limited, we should enjoy the things that he provides, like food. A foodie like me was happy to read this, drink, and the result of our labor. So when I think about, how sometimes, how some people, when you transition into like a proper relationship with God and the things that you have to live behind, some people now feel, Christian life is not an enjoying life. Please, I don't believe so, and we have seen it here. Enjoyment is a gift from God, but please enjoy wisely. Now, competition, control, and the need to display superiority is a driving force for our work ethic. And this I've seen very, very truly play out, especially even in the workplace. You see how this is just almost a standard. But then we see that comparison causes us never to be satisfied. The teacher says that there is more joy in working together and partnering with each other than working for your own selfish ambition. Remember that verse, it says 2 is better than 1 because they get more results for their labor. Guard your mouth was one of the things that, your speech and the things that you say. I think that speeches and words are very important. Ecclesiastes is also, giving wisdom from, maybe a more jaded point of view. But if you see that there's a common trend with the Proverbs and with Ecclesiastes, talking about how words are so important. Don't be rash with your mouth, period. The pursuit of wealth and power will lead to the exploitation of the helpless and never bring inner satisfaction. Wealth does not guarantee joy or pleasure in life. We all know this. In 5:18-20, instructs us that enjoying what God has provided and learning to accept our position in life is a symbol of wise giving. Quote, as in bottom line, contentment is key. Contentment is the only way that you can really, truly enjoy life. Now, my getting to know God lesson today is a short one. Whatever God sets in motion is immovable and everlasting. We cannot add to it. We cannot take away from it. And that was from 3:14. Thank you for joining me today. Tomorrow we'll be finishing our 14th book because we'll finish Ecclesiastes, reading chapters 7-12. Looking forward to it. See you then. Bye.